The Last of Us 2, the most polarizing, divisive video game of this console generation. What a week it's been for this game. I mean, we've heard every argument under the sun now for and against the video game. The critics love it, 100 out of 100. The fans, not so much. There's definitely fans that like it. A lot of people, I don't understand why when I say that there's a good amount of people that hate it, automatically that means that I'm saying everybody hates it. That's not what I mean. The point I try to make when I explain that a lot of people hate the game is that if that many people hate a major aspect of the game, again, the story that we've seen time and time again, when people say they don't like the game, it's because of the story. Now, if the story is that bad, how could it possibly be 100 out of 100 as dozens of outlets have claimed it is? Now we'll get into more detail about that later on in the video when we look at a few YouTubers and streamers and their reaction to the game. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about a few of the new arguments, or new to me at least, in the comment section for the game, I guess, or against the people that are against the game, really. Again, a lot of these I found out through reading the comments that you guys posted and just whatever from news articles and such. First up is the go-to defense when there's any kind of like review exploding, or anytime like an SJW piece of media is disliked by a lot of people, or in some kind of fashion where they can actually vote for it, they'll turn to the excuse that it's bots. I mean, sure, I guess. I know a lot of people were using this as their reasoning for why the user score went down to a 3.3 low, I believe. I don't know if it went any lower than that. It's definitely gone up since then, but the developers are saying that it's because of bots. Sure, whatever. Russia did it, right? You people are silly, man. Now, if you wanted to make an argument that a lot of the user reviews are fake, sure, I'll entertain that, but you also have to acknowledge that a lot of the user reviews are real. The next argument is equally as silly in that how can it possibly be bad if it's selling so many copies? Take that, haters, it's breaking PlayStation sales records. Yeah, because it's riding off the success of the first game. This is the dumbest argument on the planet. This is the type of argument you make when your IQ is in the double digits. For example, do you know how many terrible movies did well at the box office? Every single Transformers movie. I mean, people enjoyed them. Doesn't mean they're good. Age of Extinction made $1.1 billion at the box office. Terrible movie. What about every Twilight movie? I know the ladies love that shit, but I'm pretty sure they're not great films. And I don't want to say the name of this one just in case, you know, that bot system, but you know, that 5-0 Grays shader, you know what I'm talking about, made well over $500 million at the box office, and that was goddamn terrible too. And that was on a $40 million budget too. That was just riding off the success of the book. And if we want to talk about something that did well just riding off the success of its predecessor, Hangover 2 was terrible and made over $500 million at the box office as well, just like The Last of Us Part 2 riding off the success of the first game. So all of you trying to use that as your argument as to why the game's not bad, you are the weakest link of your movement. You are an embarrassment to humanity. I would stay off the internet if I were you. Next one's kind of a two-parter. Somebody commented like, on PlayStation Store, The Last of Us 2 ratings are at like 4.75 out of 5. And the argument was only people that purchased the game or validated that they have purchased the game were able to leave those ratings. Now, I'm sure a lot of those are valid ratings that, you know, people genuinely like the game. Like I said, there's a plethora of people that probably love this game. On the flip side, though, you're talking about reviews of a game that Sony made on Sony's store. The store belongs to the people who made the game. There's a bit of a conflict of interest there. They can decide which reviews stay and which ones go, I'm just saying. And the whole, you need to own the game in order to be able to review it. I mean, in this day and age where you can watch the entirety of the game being streamed on Twitch or YouTube, giving you full context of what the story and plot and character development and everything in that regard. And if you want to know what the gameplay is like, you just play the first one, because apparently the gameplay has not changed one iota since the first game. So with all of that, you really want to make that argument? That's pretty stupid, I'm sorry. Now, very quickly before we get into the YouTubers and streamers that I was talking about earlier, I just want to mention that when people say they're bothered by like the social justice crap in this game, and that it's being used as a crutch kind of, I've been thinking of like the simplest way of explaining why that is, and I think I've boiled it down to, with all the bad storytelling crap, the narrative, the character development, the plot holes, all of that, with all that being as terrible as it is, if the game were filled only with straight characters, no representation, no mod diversity crap. If everybody was straight in the game, it would not be being praised the way that it is. But because it has all of those things, people are willing to overlook all of the negative aspects. Because if they don't, if they decide to not like this game, for instance, they feel like they're choosing to go against the groups that the video game is trying to represent. When in reality, you're not doing these groups, you're not doing alphabet people any favors by making excuses for a bad piece of entertainment, in this case video game, that's supposed to represent their community. Because for the people that don't care about the woke nonsense, or not into social justice or anything like that, all you're conditioning these people to believe is that these communities, alphabet people for instance, are just associated with bad product. And the more it goes on in the future, you're just creating that prejudice that when people hear like, oh, that movie has to do with alphabet themes, I'm not watching that crap. You know, you're setting them back. You're not doing them any favors. But anyway, as days go by, more and more people complete the game, and we're getting more and more clips or videos or opinions of larger creators. Now, AngryJoe, who is a liberal progressive type, a lot of people say that he is an SJW or has liberal or progressive ideologies at least. We all know his political leaning, let's just put it that way. Anyway, he would be on this game's side as far as all of that goes, right? The woke stuff. But this is what he had to say about the journalists being ignorant, the mainstream media essentially being ignorant, and just the hatred everybody has towards the game. Warning, it does have spoilers. Just saying, but here's what he has to say.
And I'm so shocked that journalists are so ignorant, or they're making bad faith arguments and saying that, oh, well, just because a character, a main character is killed doesn't make it bad. Nobody is saying that we think the game is bad because Joel dies. You know, you don't have to kill Joel, but if you do want to kill Joel, that's not why we dislike the story. It's how you do it. You get that through your thick fucking skull. It's not that hard of a concept. How you kill a beloved character is important, especially if that character is the main character that people care about. Nobody cares about Abby, especially when she murders your favorite character, and you do it in such a shitty way, and then act surprised when people are angry and resentful. After 7 years of waiting, you act fucking surprised. If you act surprised, you might be a bit slow. If that offends you, if you're offended, but you might be a bit slow if you're surprised at what is going on right now with the opinion of The Last of Us 2. You're either willfully ignorant or you're a dumbass in the friendliest way possible. So those are my opinions right now. I'm very angry and upset with the first segment that I played, which is what they wanted. But Joe, this is exactly the emotions that Neil Druckmann wanted. Yes, you can get those emotions, and actually, no, it's not. Because when the cutscene happened, I didn't feel any emotion. I felt more shocked. I was shocked at how poorly it was implemented, and then anger grew from how poorly it was implemented. It wasn't the intention of, oh my God, you know, now we got to go and we get revenge, and now, you know, Joel, you know, gave his life and it was a random occurrence. But you wrote it that way. You wrote it in such a contrived way that it was completely unbelievable at that moment. Now, if it was believable, it could have worked better. I felt so much more when Joel's daughter passed away. Like, we were literally crying. I haven't cried at all, you know, when Joel was killed. Like, there's no room to even take that emotional moment, because then you have players play Ellie as she runs into the room, breaking up the cutscene, and then you do some more cutscene. So you're breaking up the gameplay with cutscenes, but then later on the pacing is bad because we're all running around here as Ellie alone and barely doing anything in the city, and there's no cutscenes to break that up. Anyways, that's it. That's it.
And this is the sentiment that a lot of the user score represents. If you actually go through and read a lot of the user reviews, they talk about this specifically. Or at least that's what the bots carefully and thoughtfully wrote about the game. And if you still don't think that's valid, if you don't think that that's a valid criticism of the game, check out how this Korean Twitch streamer feels about exactly what AngryJoe was just talking about.
시발 병신겜.
나는 좀 이게 좀 그래. 이게 좀 그 아버지 같은 거잖아요. 나는 못 보겠어. 어우.
아 이건 착한 빡종 인정합니다. 보기 너무 역했다 인정.
저는 4년 전만 해도 파상풍 걸려서 뒤지기 일보 직전의 상태에서도 사람 몇 명 정도는 제압할 수 있었답니다.
여보. Can I have
좀비물 중에서 욕
Scissors?
많이 먹는 워킹데드이지만 워킹데드만한 작품이
여보?
진짜 존재하지 않는 듯
Can I
싶습니다.
have scissors?
좀비물
독박친
반짝이
건
못박은 나와
충분히는 점수를 높게 줬다는 것이다.
일단 개같은 개연 스토리와 연출의 지문과 평점이 높다는 게 진짜 이해가 안 간다. 병신겜.
Yep, that was right after the Joel scene, the one that AngryJoe was ranting about. He didn't want to have anything to do with the video game after that. Cut it in half, took the other disc, I don't know what the other disc, whatever bonus is in the other disc, he cut that in half. But I'm sure you're gonna say he doesn't own the game either, right? Oh, he got it for free because he's a Twitch streamer. Oh man. And lastly, I wanted to talk about Penguins or Critical's Moist Meter, which is his review of The Last of Us Part 2. Now, if you go through the entirety of his video, he tries to give the game credit where credit is due. He says the visuals are the best you've ever seen, and you hear that sentiment a lot with a lot of user reviews. But he goes in even deeper. He tries so hard to justify a lot of what the game is by saying the flashbacks were some of the best written parts of the game, that if only they were put together in a more cohesive form, it would have been a lot better. He mentions two characters that were the only two well-written characters amongst a plethora of horribly written characters.
The first game wrapped itself up absolutely beautifully with an extremely powerful narrative, and I did not think Naughty Dog could do anything even close to that level again in the same universe, and they didn't. And somehow this was even more disappointing than I was expecting. Now let me just say right now, my disappointment with this game doesn't come from the fact that Joel's not the lead. I have no problem with Ellie being the lead. I have no problem with Ellie being in love with another girl in the game. I need to say that because the internet has already come to this conclusion where if you don't like The Last of Us 2, it's only because you hate women, or you're a homophobe, or you can't stand the fact that men aren't the leads in the game. None of that has anything to do with my disappointment of this game. The storytelling and narrative in this game is absolute dog shit. It is. I'm sorry to say that. It fucking hurts me to say that because of how much I loved the first Last of Us, but this is a very big decline. In a nutshell, the entire story is revenge is bad. And they just keep hammering that theme home for the entire 25 hours. Revenge is bad. Revenge fucking sucks. Revenge has all of these far-reaching consequences. Everyone's getting hurt around you because of revenge. Don't fight fire with fire. Revenge with revenge. It's terrible. And if this game was not called The Last of Us 2, if this was a standalone IP, I don't think it would be nearly as bad. You know, it'd be much more forgivable. But the fact that it's following up something as unique and beautiful as Last of Us narrative with a generic revenge plot, it's laughable and lazy. It seems like a soulless cash grab off the goodwill of The Last of Us. And in this wet fart of a game, there's nothing even close to that, because characters will die and you don't even remember their names. And I'm not talking about just like throwaway characters. I'm talking about some of the main characters. They'll just get killed in a pathetic way, and you don't even know who they were or what they did. All of these new characters they introduce have no fucking development at all, or personality, or anything about them. They're just bland, flat characters, except for two. There's only two characters in this entire game I felt were actually decently written characters that were interesting. I'm talking Yara and Lev. I think their flashbacks were actually the highlights of the game. The time you spend with Joel in the flashback, Abby's flashbacks, I actually think those were well written and enjoyable to experience, but it's like they didn't know where to put them in the game. It's like the game was just so rushed that they just randomly edited these things in. It'll have you brutally murder some random person, and then 6 hours later it'll give you a flashback of who that person was and why you should feel guilty for what you did. But by that point, you've already fucking forgotten about that because that character had no weight at the time. It just feels so poorly put together. I have no other words for it. It just feels so goddamn lazy.
He tries so hard to find the good in this game. He genuinely wanted to like this game. And he even goes so far to say that if this were not the sequel to The Last of Us, if this were another IP, a standalone IP with nothing to do with the first game, it wouldn't be as bad of a game in his eyes. He doesn't want to call it a bad game. But it's very telling when he says that he came into this knowing that he would be disappointed based on how good The Last of Us 1 is, that there's no way the second one could live up to that. So he went in with the expectation that he would be disappointed, but somehow managed to be even more disappointed than that is a very telling sign. Because I don't know about you, but every time I've done that where I went in expecting to be disappointed in something, I walked away thinking like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. Because you've already set the stage, you've conditioned your brain that it's gonna be the worst. So if it's anything better than that, you're like, oh, it's not that bad, right? So it's very telling when he did that and somehow it was worse than what he thought it would be. But none of that matters because the game is 100 out of 100 masterpiece, baby. Oh my god. Anyway, that's all I got for this one. Leave a comment down below, smash that like button and subscribe with all notifications on so I can see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you there.